Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The headline screamed, Netanyahu delivers 48-hour ultimatum to Kenya. The world's attention was suddenly fixed on Nairobi, as news anchors repeated the same chilling words across every channel and social media erupted with speculation and fear. The sense of urgency was palpable, the tension almost tangible, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Nairobi on the brink, comply or face consequences. The city's usual energy was replaced by an uneasy stillness. Streets that once bustled with life now lay deserted, as if the entire population was waiting for the next move in a high-stakes game they never asked to play. The city slept, but the State House was alive with tension. Inside, the air was thick with anxiety, every shadow seeming to whisper of the choices that lay ahead. Advisors paced the halls, their faces etched with worry, as the weight of the nation pressed down on every decision. My emergency phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the silence. On the line, Benjamin Netanyahu, his voice cold, measured, and final. There was no room for negotiation, no hint of compromise. The message was clear: time was running out. He demanded Kenya hand over its newly discovered cobalt reserves to an Israeli-led consortium. 48 hours or face sanctions, isolation, and withdrawal of support. The stakes were enormous. Cobalt, the lifeblood of modern technology, had become the center of a geopolitical storm, and Kenya was caught in the eye. He called it partnership. I heard a threat. The word echoed in my mind, twisting into something darker. This was not an offer, it was an ultimatum, a demand dressed up as diplomacy. This was not negotiation, it was economic war. The pressure was immense, the consequences of refusal potentially catastrophic. Yet to accept would mean surrendering our future, our resources, and our dignity. I thought of Africa's history: ultimatums, stolen resources, leaders forced to choose between wealth and safety. The ghosts of colonialism lingered in every corner of that room, reminding me that these battles were not new. Our ancestors had faced similar crossroads, their choices shaping the destiny of generations. This wasn't just about cobalt, it was about sovereignty. It was about the right to decide our own fate, to protect what was ours, and to stand tall in the face of intimidation. The minerals beneath our soil were more than commodities, they were symbols of our independence. Netanyahu's patience was that of a predator, circling, waiting for weakness. He ended the call with a chilling warning. The clock is ticking, Mr. President. Every second that passed felt heavier, the weight of expectation growing with each tick of the clock. The silence after was heavy. My advisors gathered, faces drawn and voices hushed. Each one looked to me for guidance, for reassurance, for a decision that would define our nation's future. The room was filled with unspoken fears and the burden of responsibility. The choice: surrender our nation's soul for peace, or stand and risk a superpower's wrath. I weighed the risks, the possible fallout, the lives that could be upended by either path. The responsibility was crushing, but the alternative, betraying our people's trust, was unthinkable. I looked out at the sleeping city, millions depending on my answer, their hopes, their dreams, their futures, all balanced on the edge of a single decision. The city lights flickered in the darkness, a silent reminder of what was at stake. I remembered our ancestors' struggles, the cost of past concessions. Their sacrifices had paved the way for our freedom, and I could not let their legacy be sold for short-term gain. The echoes of their courage filled me with resolve. This was our line in the sand, a moment that would be remembered for generations, a stand for dignity, for sovereignty, for the right to choose our own destiny. I knew what I had to say. The answer was no. With that single word, I chose to defend our nation's future, no matter the cost. Before the first light of dawn broke the horizon, the cabinet gathered in a state of urgency. The air was thick with tension as the leaders of our nation convened to address a crisis that threatened the very fabric of our sovereignty. My foreign minister, with a voice tinged with concern, warned us of the looming storm. They'll paint us as hostile, he cautioned, threaten our trade and lobby the West against us. His words were a stark reminder of the geopolitical chess game we were embroiled in. The finance minister, with a somber expression, presented a series of charts that painted a grim picture. Our shilling was plummeting, capital was fleeing our borders, and aid that once flowed freely was now frozen. They can cripple us without firing a single shot, he warned, his voice echoing the gravity of our economic predicament. Our security officials briefed us on the multifaceted threats we faced: cyber attacks, covert operations, and insidious attempts to destabilize our nation from within. The room was filled with a palpable sense of urgency as we absorbed the magnitude of the challenges ahead. The atmosphere was grim, yet realistic. I listened intently to the concerns and fears laid bare before me. Then, with a deep breath, I stood to address the room. You've shown me the cost of saying no, I began, my voice steady. But let me remind you of the cost of saying yes. I spoke of our ancestors, of the resources that were once stolen from us, and of the dignity that was lost in the process. We are not just custodians of a treasury, I declared. We are guardians of a legacy that stretches back through the ages. The price of their so-called partnership is our dignity, our sovereignty, our self-respect, I continued, my voice rising with conviction. That is a price I will not pay. No Kenyan will. We must stand firm in our resolve. As I spoke, I saw fear give way to resolve in the eyes of my fellow leaders. We would not be victims of circumstance but architects of our own destiny. Our wealth, our resources, our future, none of it was for sale. We resolved to face the consequences of our decision, together, as a free and sovereign nation. The cabinet transformed into a war council, united in purpose and determination. The decision was made. We would not break under pressure. Now, I said, my voice filled with determination, let's get to work. We have a country to defend, a legacy to uphold, and a future to secure for generations to come. With renewed purpose, we rose to the challenge, ready to take action and defend our nation's dignity. We went public before Israel could spin the story. I addressed the nation live, laying out the ultimatum and the stakes. I didn't sugarcoat the hardships ahead. The response was instant. #Kenya says no trended across Africa. People filled the streets, united in pride, waving flags and singing. From market women to tech workers, everyone claimed agency in our destiny. Our stand sparked a continental movement. Across Africa, people saw their own histories in our struggle. Social media exploded with support, songs, art, messages of solidarity. The wave was tangible. Nigerian business leaders pledged trade. Ghanaian students protested in Accra. It was a grassroots awakening, people leading, not waiting for leaders. The true power of a nation is its people's will. The ultimatum meant to isolate us had united us. Africa stood with Kenya. We were not alone. Popular support was powerful, but we needed official backing. My diplomats reached out to every African Union head of state. Rwanda called first. Your fight is Africa's fight. Soon, statements poured in. South Africa condemned economic coercion, Ghana declared. The days of Africa as a chessboard are over. The AU convened an emergency summit. The chairperson called the ultimatum an insult to the continent, a relic of colonialism. The AU unanimously condemned the ultimatum and formed a special economic task force to support Kenya. Netanyahu's government had miscalculated. Expecting division, they found unity. Africa spoke with one voice. The story was no longer Israel versus Kenya, but a global power versus a united continent. The chorus of defiance changed everything. We were not isolated, we were a bloc. As predicted, the attack turned covert. Fake news flooded social media, rumors, doctored photos, lies about bribes and violence. Bot networks amplified chaos, aiming to erode trust and spark panic. Cyber attacks hit government sites, the energy grid, and banks. It was a silent war. Lines of code, not bullets, but we were ready. Our young cyber defense team fought back, tracing and exposing the attacks. They launched a public campaign, Think Before You Share. Citizens joined in, fact-checking and debunking rumors. We quietly presented evidence to global partners, linking attacks to a private firm tied to Israeli intelligence. The attempt to divide us only made us more united and vigilant. Kenyans became digital defenders. The crisis strengthened our resolve, our digital sovereignty held. The African Union's unity drew global attention. China quickly supported African sovereignty, condemning bullying tactics. South American nations, recalling their own struggles, expressed solidarity. Brazil and Argentina called for a resolution based on law, not coercion. Even in Europe, Scandinavian countries voiced concern over the ultimatum. At the UN Security Council, African members reframed the issue as a threat to global peace. The US and Western allies, usually pro-Israel, stayed silent, an indirect victory. International support became our shield. Sanctions now looked like an attack on a united, supported nation. Global media shifted the narrative. Kenya was David, Israel the overreaching Goliath. We were no longer isolated. The world was watching and many stood with us. As the deadline neared, Kenya was electric with unity. Instead of fear, people organized a massive unity rally in Uhuru Park. Flags, candles, songs of freedom, no weapons, just hope. My final act, signing a bill at the University of Nairobi to triple investment in mineral processing and tech education. Our resources would be developed by Kenyans, for Kenyans. As midnight struck, the city erupted in celebration. No jets, no collapse, just resilience. We had called their bluff and stood strong. Messages of pride poured in from across Africa. The celebration was about rediscovering ourselves. Kenyan identity and African strength were reborn. The ultimatum forged our spirit. We emerged united, unbreakable. We had passed through fire and found ourselves. The world didn't end. Despite dire predictions, the feared economic collapse never came. Instead, a new chapter began, fueled by unexpected alliances and a shared determination to chart our own course. As global headlines speculated about Africa's fate, our leaders quietly forged partnerships that would reshape the continent's destiny. The African Union's Economic Task Force moved swiftly, fast-tracking a historic Pan-African trade deal. This agreement opened new markets across the continent, allowing goods, services, and ideas to flow more freely than ever before. It also reduced our dependence on Western economies, giving us the leverage to negotiate on our own terms. When international lenders hesitated, African development banks stepped up, filling the financing gap. They provided critical support for infrastructure, technology, and local businesses, ensuring that progress would not stall. What once seemed a threat became an opportunity. We embraced greater self-reliance, investing in our own talent and resources. Across cities and villages, a new spirit of entrepreneurship took hold, as people realized that the future was truly in their hands. At the next AU summit, we introduced the Nairobi Protocol, a bold pact of mutual economic defense. This agreement was more than just words. It was a promise that no African nation would stand alone in the face of external pressure. If any member faced coercion or economic threats, all would unite in support. This show of solidarity sent a powerful message to the world. Africa would no longer be divided or manipulated by outside interests. The protocol was adopted unanimously. For the first time, Africa stood as one, determined not to be a playground for global powers, but a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. The most profound change, however, was seen in our youth. Inspired by this new era, young Africans began to dream bigger and reach higher. The crisis shattered old colonial mindsets, igniting a wave of innovation and ambition. Students and young professionals flocked to fields like science, technology, and engineering, eager to build solutions for Africa by Africans. Enrollment in STEM programs soared. New companies emerged, especially in minerals processing and cybersecurity, turning Africa into a hub of technological advancement and industrial growth. We stopped exporting raw ore and instead built our own processing plants. A Pan-African Battery Alliance was formed, ensuring that the value of our resources stayed within our borders. The ultimatum that was meant to strip us of our resources ended up pushing us to unlock their true value, transforming our economies from the inside out. It was more than just survival. It was the dawn of African economic independence, a new era defined by unity, innovation, and hope for generations to come. The 48-hour ultimatum became a lesson across Africa. An ultimatum only has power if met with fear. Courage, unity, and strategy can make threats collapse. True strength is withstanding bullying, not inflicting it. A single, united no can be more powerful than an army. Our greatest resource is our people and unity. When united, we are resilient beyond measure. The night Africa said no was a beginning, not an end. We drew our own line in the sand, open to partnership, never exploitation. The power was always ours to claim.